Welcome to E-commerce with Coffee, a podcast powered by Amber Engine, where we share e-com secrets for brands over your favorite brew. We start with the caffeine and then leap enthusiastically into behind-the-scenes e-com insights that led to the success of our guests. I'm Nate Svoboda, and I'm about to serve you up the best. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode of E-commerce with Coffee. Today, I get to speak with Jason Butcher. He is the CEO of Coin Payments, which is a digital currency payment solution that makes it easy to integrate with your Shopify or other e-commerce site in order to accept crypto payments. So today, we're really going to be talking about crypto's effect on or impact on e-com and how payment processing really should fit into a brand's overall strategy. So Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nate. Great to be here.
Awesome. Really excited. Before we get really into the meat of our conversation, I know you're a busy guy. Imagine that caffeine has got to play some role in your life.
It's morning and night, as my colleagues say. How can you drink coffee at night? It's just a regular thing. So, although I don't honestly think it does anything for me, but I definitely have it usually in the morning or afternoon, and then definitely usually at night after dinner too. So.
Do you brew it yourself? Are you a Keurig guy? What's your choice?
I'm a little bit lazy today, so doing Keurig.
Hey, there's no bashing on Keurig because I've had my fair share. I like getting those reusable ones, and then you can just put your own coffee grounds into them.
Yeah,
I started
yeah,
doing that
yeah.
recently. I really like that.
Yeah, I
Very
have
cool.
some of that too, for sure.
Awesome. Well, again, really excited to chat today. This will be our first conversation, on the fintech side of things, especially talking about crypto. But before we dive in, can you talk to us a little bit about Coin Payments, right, and the service that you provide? What does it mean to be a digital currency gateway?
Yeah, for sure. So the business was actually started in 2013. So definitely one of the leaders in the industry as far as starting to provide a platform to allow merchants and individuals to really accept crypto as a payment. So sort of like if you integrate Visa or MasterCard or a shopping cart system that allows you to accept some form of payment, e-payments or PayPal or others, Coin Payments is really that. It is a gateway that allows you to easily accept crypto right into your merchant services platform or into your gateway.
And I imagine that there's probably a lot of people who hear that and they think to themselves, God, that just sounds so hard or so technical. So talk us through how easy or difficult is it to begin working with, Coin Payments, for example, and start accepting crypto payments?
Sure. Well, if you're a merchant who's selling a product or service, you're probably running something like a WordPress or WooCommerce or something like that. And we have shopping cart plugins that are simple plug and play plugins that can easily be integrated into your commerce system. Or if you're a Shopify platform, for example, we're integrated directly into Shopify so that you can simply turn on Coin Payments as the facility to be able to accept crypto. And it's as easy as that. Simply with creating an account at coinpayments.net, verifying your account, you can be accepting crypto right away.
I love that. And I knew it was actually pretty easy, so I just figured I'd tee that up for you. Now, crypto has really been buzzing a lot, right? Everyone seems to be talking about it, whether they know anything about it or not. Especially since Bitcoin's price explosion last year. Now, talk to us a little bit about, consumer adoption as it comes with paying with cryptocurrency, right? Are we seeing that more this year than last year? Obviously, it's been increasing, but talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing.
Sure. Well, I can tell you some stats. For example, over the last 18 months, Shopify, I'll just reference to say merchants that we work with Shopify, we've seen their business volumes about 15 times what they were only 18 months ago. And that doesn't mean that we've had 15 times more merchants sign up or anything else. It means that those merchants who were open to accepting crypto are seeing 15 times more of the business volume. Now, you could say, okay, well, it's only 15 times. But you could also say that the adoption rate is starting to happen at that kind of rate that substantiates why a merchant should be open to accepting crypto. Of course, as you said, Bitcoin's price and volatility, that creates some speculation from an investment standpoint. But where you see other cryptocurrencies, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's other types of stable coins or USDT or USDC being used as sort of a point of transaction where those coins are a little bit more stable in stability and value. But at the same time, just the usage of crypto in our own business, we've seen a tremendous amount of increase just in the last couple of years.
And so I guess what I'm curious, and I don't know if you'll have, a specific number on this, but what are people buying with cryptocurrency? Like, are people going into, I know we're talking about Shopify stores, but do you see like going into a Starbucks and buying their coffee with Bitcoin? Do you see it more of, making purchases in an online store? I guess talk to us a little bit about what you think about that.
To be frank, it's not quite there yet to buy a $5 Starbucks coffee. It is from the functionality and the speed and the process, etc. However, the transactional fees on, say, a $5 transaction just isn't really there if you're using, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum. Perhaps if it's an integration into Lightning Network, where the fees are much lower, or say you're using another token or coin where they're much quicker, much faster with less fees. There's definitely use cases that are out there that have proven and shown that those systems are there. You're starting to see, you've obviously heard of NFTs, right? Well, the NFT marketplaces are starting to use things like Solana, for example, because the transaction speeds are so quick, the cost of those fees are so low that it makes it actually viable to be selling products that are lower cost over a blockchain like a Solana system or a Veles, or, there's just so many different types of change that are out there that are quicker, lower costs, where I think those are where we're going to see the real adoption, even the points of CBDCs or the usages of stable coins, where you're going to see much more usage on a transactional basis.
So it sounds like you're saying, at least depending on the coin or the asset or whatever the terminology is we're going to use, it may be more of the big ticket items that you're going to pay for, because that'll be what makes the transaction fee worth it. Because to your point, if you're paying a $2 fee on a $5 cup of coffee, like that just doesn't really make sense at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the answer to this might seem kind of obvious, but so obviously, I think it's fair to say adoption is lower than those who use credit cards in the United States, at least. So what are some of the brands that or benefits that brands should expect to make them go and begin accepting crypto payments?
Well, there's a number that are very obvious and clear. One is that like the days of Visa, MasterCard, before the adoption of Visa, MasterCard, which took really about 50 years, just so you know, from the first time the credit card programs launched. If you have a buyer and that buyer is at your shopping cart and they say, hey, are you only accepting Visa or MasterCard and you accept crypto? I actually will prefer to pay with crypto perhaps. The other side is that if you have, say, chargeback problems, and you are concerned about fraud or you're concerned about those different areas within, say, your specific target audience, crypto, there isn't the chargeback programs, chargeback situations that you see in the credit card industry. Of course, there's the other obvious piece. If you use coin payments, those transactional fees are only 0.5% compared to, say, 3, 4, 5, and some merchants are actually paying higher than that percent. You also instantly have that credit payment to your wallet instantly. So you're not waiting for the 1 day, 3 days, 4 days, whatever the delays on your actual acceptance. So there's a number of those pieces that are definitely benefits. Some people say, well, that speed thing, you can negotiate with your bank or other groups and they can have same day settlements. And in some places you can, if you're using say an ACH payment, right? Or say you're using payments in Canada, EFTs. Those payments are almost instant too, or same day. So there's some areas within the settlement time that's not as competitive, but it's also that you're in control of your assets. So if somebody
I forget where I heard this first, but it's crazy to think that in 2021, a lot of times the fastest way to get, a stack of money from New York to London is probably to get on a plane and to fly it there and deposit it in a bank there in person.
or you send it in crypto.
Well, exactly, and that's the alternative. Exactly. Um, One thing that I personally was curious about, I don't know how much you'll be able to speak to. I feel like we've been hearing a fair amount, especially since all the supply chain issues that came around with COVID, about the impact that mining crypto can have on climate change, right? And I know that it depends on the coin in terms of Bitcoin, I believe, has a higher energy consumption than other ones out there. So maybe what is being done to make crypto payments and transactions more sustainable in the long run?
Oh, it's a pretty sensitive discussion, I think, because I'm very conscious of sustainability and other things. And, if I look at all of the usage of vehicles and cars in the world, I see much more challenge in the issues with the usage of vehicles and gas and fuels, manufacturing, shipping today. More ships that are out there actually cause more harm to our uh, ecological sort of being on Earth than all the vehicles on the world. So I think that there's a piece of negative news that are out in the market saying, "Oh, crypto mining is taking all this energy consumption, etc." And the reality of it is many of the mining companies that I know are actually either being powered today by alternative energies or renewable energies, and or they're moving towards that. So I honestly think that that is just a bit of a news story that people are grasping on rather than really looking at something else. Remember, every single bank in the world is powered by electricity, right?
Yeah.
The retail branches of banks have power and electricity and systems that are using and consuming, and individuals' computers are consuming energy as well. So I don't really think that it's something that's tremendously affecting the world compared to anybody else. Today, there's servers that are powering the internet. If you really looked at how many servers AWS is running to power this service that we're on right now, for example, you would start seeing, well, the negative news of all of the power that the internet uses. Should we shut down the internet?
Right. That's a fair point. And I'm sure there were probably a lot of people who were angry they couldn't get a graphics card in this past year.
Exactly, right?
Well, I mean, and this is putting you on the spot a little bit here. Any particular assets you're excited about? I mean, obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two buzzwords, right? I know you mentioned Solana for maybe lower transactions. Anything you're particularly excited about?
You know what? I mean, just being very transparent, I am payment agnostic, right? I believe in all forms of value and exchange between two people or between individuals or groups. And I think that ultimately the winner of all the sort of organizations and groups are going to be communities that have a common value of exchange of value. And that may be CBDCs, right? That may be stable coins that are backed by assets that are stable. And really, where I'm excited by is what I'm starting to see the innovation and development of global economies and groups developing these digital assets that are blockchain based, that do empower more people to have more adoption and make things easier. Where I have challenges with some of the current cryptos, and this is almost all the coins you see, including a lot of these NFTs and launch pads and all these different organizations that are changing ways of exchanging products and tools and digital contracts, is that to create true adoption, you need to have massive audience. And the likes, as much as people say it's challenging, the likes of the Facebooks, the likes of the WeChats, the likes of these large organizations, Twitters, Skrills, organizations that have huge audiences, telephone communications, telecom companies in certain markets today are truly the largest financial institutions. And they're already trading bits and bytes, right? They're trading phone credits, which if you put a phone credit system on a blockchain, you actually technically have the best cryptocurrency. So I think that there is still lots of room for change, and I can't say that I would necessarily be pick an exact token today, or an exact currency that I'm super excited about. I believe in Bitcoin. 100%.
And this is asking you to predict the future a little bit. But there's so many tokens or coins, and I mean the verbiage is different, and I don't even claim to fully understand the nuances. But it seems like at this point it's kind of just like the stock market, where you pick a coin or a token, and that's the stock that you're picking, and it either goes up or down. But there's so many out there, and they seem to be coming out on a regular basis. Do you see any consolidation happening there in the near future? I mean, is that just going to be the way that it is, and there's certain assets that are more stable and more used for commerce, or I guess what does that look like?
Yeah, and it's very big speculation. I spoke many years ago, maybe 4, maybe even 5 years ago now, at a blockchain technology conference, and I suggested back then that I felt that cryptocurrencies of the day, like you said, thousands or hundreds of them, were much more like commodities, right? They may represent an asset, they may represent a product, they may represent contracts or agreements, they may represent anything that is a transactional between two people. It may represent some form of GPT almost, or like value of a company or value of a country. Who knows, right? But the digital tokenization is what's happened, and it's what will continue to happen. Um, in any sort of industry or market, ultimately there has to be some form of agreement between two parties when you exchange value. And what that token or that digital currency represents is our agreement between how we exchange that value. So when you suggest like stocks, for example, well, you're investing in some stocks that represent the future potential value of that participation in the company, which of course is some digital tokens that are out there today. People are speculating on the specific potential value of the participation that token represents in that organization or in that group or in that community. So that's speculation. Now, if you and I are going to exchange value, if you go back way before even funds or cash or dollars, we may have bartered between your wonderful warmer jacket that you're wearing right now and my smaller shirt that I'm wearing. Hey, I'm cold. I have something that you may want, and you have something that I want. We decide to barter, and I figure that that's more valuable than what I have to value. So we exchange that value, right?
Yeah.
That's the digital currency today, just is that figure, it's that process. And people say, oh, well, I can just use my Visa or MasterCard. You're not using a Visa or MasterCard to make a payment. You're using your stored value behind the payment method. And crypto is the same way. You're using your asset and you're using the blockchain as the method of payment.
Right. And obviously we've talked about like transaction fees is something to be thought about. But so then, if at the end of the day, it's really just a shared value, right? It's two people agreeing that something has a value to it. How should a brand go about educating themselves to know which currencies they should choose to accept or not accept? I'm sure obviously that part of that plays into your role in working with them, but
Yeah, again, it goes to the same part. Like if I'm a merchant today and I decide to accept Bitcoin, right? And I only accept Bitcoin. I don't accept any other currency. That's because I've decided to either hedge a little bit on the speculation of the value of Bitcoin. But if I'm a merchant who needs to liquidate that Bitcoin right away because I have a very small, say, spread in my revenues, right? My profit off of selling that product, or products again are different than services, because if my product is, say, I have a 40% revenue and value, right? That's my profit margin. Then I have a 40%, technically I have a 40% spread that I can justify what my ups and downs are. So that is where a product seller may look at Bitcoin strictly. Now, if I'm selling a service and I'm charging, I don't know, say $100 an hour, well, I can probably speculate on my whole $100 an hour and not have to worry about whether it's a loss or a gain at the same level as a product. So again, when you look at just accepting Bitcoin, you're participating in that speculation. At the same time, some products allow you to auto convert from that acceptance of Bitcoin to, say, a USDT or to a fiat, which allows you to now take away the hedge and automatically convert to the same value or a consistent value based on that value that you've done that transaction at. So if you use Coin Payments, for example, you can say, I'm going to accept Dogecoin, right? And you accepted Dogecoin, you've accepted your $100 an hour, and they paid you $100 in Doge. You can now auto convert that to USDT.
You can take that 17 quadrillion Doge. And,
Right. But then you can auto convert, or you can decide to hedge and speculate on the value of Doge, right? And some people definitely benefit from the speculation and hedging, and some people may not do so well.
So, and I totally makes sense what you just said. So, but would you say that the majority of businesses would then transfer what they accept into more of a stable coin, or is it really just a toss up depending on the business?
It's a toss up between the business and the individual or the group. We are definitely finding more today, more of the people who are adopting crypto, not necessarily have been in this space, not necessarily technical, not necessarily in the space for the last 3, 4, 5 years. I would say today there's more demand for accepting crypto, where they can accept that crypto and then auto convert it, or to be able to have fiat settlements.
So, I really think that we've had a great conversation so far about, what is crypto? What are all these like terminologies that we're using? But now I want to think about how a business should actually bring payment processing or, the financials into their business strategy, right? So we're thinking about, keywords and marketplaces all the time when we talk about e-commerce and product data. But I imagine that there are a lot of business decisions that go in to what kind of payments are we going to accept? What type of provider are we going to work with? If I'm the CEO of a company, what are some of those things that I should be thinking about or expect to face?
Sure. So I would say there's a number of pieces to that. One is what market is your operating business in, right? So if you're operating in Europe, you may have a different taxation situation. You may have a different requirement for reporting your assets or reporting your revenue in crypto compared to, say, Canada or the US or Latin America or different regions. So that is one thing that you should probably talk to an accountant or a tax advisor based on how you accept that. The next thing is, I think that in some industries, you have a service industry, and the service industry, say you're a lawyer, right? And the lawyer simply accepts that crypto. They know who their clients are. They know most likely the source of those funds. So there is some compliance elements that are a little bit easier for certain markets, and then other markets who, they may very well be questioned why did you accept the payment for $100,000 in Bitcoin? And where was the source of those revenues and those funds? But you would probably be asked that anyways if you took that payment in a wire or if you took that payment on a credit card payment too.
Right.
So,
but then it's identified, right? Because that's part of the difference with the blockchain is it's all anonymous, even though it's kept accurate.
Yeah, and as much as people think it's anonymous, it's not, because you can relate to it, right? It's irrefutable. You can validate 100% that that's where that payment came from. And if you've done a transaction, you can see a bunch of different things with regards to who you did that transaction with. So the other side, I think that I was just in a conversation earlier today with a large group of e-commerce groups. And they said, we haven't accepted crypto. We've been considering using crypto as a form of payouts to our suppliers, to our affiliate networks, which of course we support a lot of. And the reason that is it's easier for them. It's more efficient. Their affiliates are actually incentivized because they think, hey, a new opportunity, a new way to target a new customer or a new affiliate or a new way to market. So there's creative ways of actually building the business based on, are you accepting crypto and are you paying people in crypto as well? So I think that's something from a business that should really be looking at is how do I enhance my business? How do I enhance the forms of payments? Some businesses, for example, today work with credit card issuers so that they can deliver a credit card to everybody so that they can do a payment. And some people today are looking at how can I do the same way with using crypto.
Man, I wish that I'd worked at a company where my boss gave me a Bitcoin 10 years ago. That would have been pretty awesome.
For sure. Yeah, I know.
Well, so you mentioned this a second ago, and obviously we've already alluded to it, right? A blockchain is by definition kept accurate. Everything is irrefutably provable. It all relates to one another. But because a lot of these payments are happening via API, and maybe it's harder to do the reporting because even though it's relatable, you're doing it by like an IP address or however people are denoted by the system. What are some of the security concerns that your customers have, or that you usually find that you have to address?
Um, I think where we're slightly different than maybe some other service providers or other groups is we actually also provide a custodial wallet. So in the custodial wallet service, you have some security elements, right? If you pass away your passcode to say your IT guy, or you sign up and you share your IP address, you share your 2FA, you share your validation, you share your email address, and one of your accounts guys or sales guys or IT guys goes rogue and takes your details. Well, technically, you've provided them the same access as you would have if you gave them your bank account details, right? So there is, as a business, there is some security risk in the fact that, hey, your business is transacting, it's receiving this as an asset. It's just the same as your bank account, right? So if you give your keys away, you share your security information, there's a security risk for sure. Um, so I would say that in a lot of business cases, the individual who's running the business tends not to be the same person who's running their website, or the
Right.
same person who set up their merchant account, or same person who's done their IT to set up their crypto facility. And I think that that's probably for us, anyways. We've experienced complaints or challenges with regards to, hey, they did give their password to somebody, and it was probably their security guy, or it may have been their IT guy. And there is, I mean, for us, it's something we can't support them with because it's they provided the information. So
Yeah. Well, and at risk of asking the same question twice, I think there's a nuance here. What should brands do to vet the security of, different payment processing options available to them? So when it actually comes down to making the decision, what are some of those things they should really be evaluating?
you know what? I guess that there's a number of pieces, of course. I would say that most merchants don't have the real ability to test, to test APIs, to test the server infrastructure, to test the security assets. I would say that most merchants wouldn't necessarily know how to or what to do with that. I would say count on references, count on, check what the other users or other user experiences have been like. There's a few service providers, ourselves and others, who've been around for quite a long time, right? And we all offer slightly different services. Some of us offer the exact same type of services. And depending on the type of business you are, if you're a merchant and you're just simply need a merchant ID and you simply want to integrate your system into your WooCommerce site, use one of the solutions that allow you to use that facility. If you have the technical skills and using an API, make sure that API is current and up to date.
Yeah. No, and that's fair, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, the reviews definitely should guide the decision, and at the end, you just have to be willing to have an upfront conversation with what is this partnership going to look like, right? Are you going to flex to fit our needs? Are you going to be devoted to this long term? Obviously, if it's more transactional, then that maybe is a red flag.
Yeah, I guess one other comment just to help support you and support the merchants is it's funny, we try to make actual relationships with our merchants, right? And it's amazing the number of merchants that use our platform who don't respond to an email, who don't contact us, who don't have a relationship with us. And for me, I find it incredibly important to have direct relationships with our merchants. So our biggest merchants, they call me personally, directly. And they don't have problems. And that relationship I think is crucial. So if you're going to set up a merchant account and you're going to depend on a service supplier to provide you the technology and solutions, I think having a personal relationship, even if it's a first time, it's that phone call or it's that email, and establishing that just really supports your business initiatives.
Yeah, because then they know that if I have a problem, I can call Jason and he's going to take care of me.
Right.
Yep. So, I think what I really want to end our conversation with here is a little bit of, I'll call it a lightning round. I was going to ask you to make a couple of kind of predictions for, sort of the mid to long term future of, e-commerce and crypto. So I'll take it in three parts. What should e-commerce brands expect in the future of fintech with regards to regulation?
Um, that's difficult to speculate on, and because in different markets they will adapt and they'll change, right? Some people have heard recently that India has come out and said, "Hey, crypto is not supported here for transactions." Russia, I think the same thing. You can buy crypto, you can invest in crypto, but transacting in crypto isn't necessarily supported. So I think that's different in different regions in different markets. Ultimately, crypto will be regulated globally, and and that'll be whether it's regulated to say, hey, we don't accept it, or hey, we fully support it, and it becomes a tool, a mechanism that is fully regulated and supported. We ourselves, we are regulated. We have licenses. We have support and work with different groups all over the world, including law enforcement, etc. And I believe that that'll just continue. And in order for true adoption to happen, we have to have that. We have to have it for confidence. We have to have it for uh, good activities, good support, good regulation. And I think that that's something that is just going to continue to grow for sure.
I love that, and it especially resonates because we can all think about the fact that 10 years ago the person who was trying to tell you about crypto, we all thought they were a little whacked out. Now today it's like, oh my god, I wish I'd listened to them. So okay, I love that. In terms of the technology now, what should brands or well, I guess e-commerce brands expect in terms of whether that's the blockchain itself, whether that's the storage technology? I guess I'll let you open that up.
You know, that is changing so fast. It's funny because I talked to my team yesterday in a sort of a whole team group conversation, and I just expressed to them that we're in an industry, and not just our industry, everything around us is changing so rapidly, so quickly, that when we go build something today and it maybe takes us a few months or 6 months or even a year, technically that's old. It's not valid anymore. So I think that the innovation and the change in what we're seeing is outpacing even the people that are doing the work. So my expectation is that things will just continue to increase with more adoption, more use, more development. It'll get better, easier, faster. And we're only at the very, very beginning space of the crypto blockchain innovation space, even though it's been around for, over 10 years.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. People only recently have the majority of people actually knew what it was, as opposed to just
Absolutely.
knowing that it exists and it's a term. And then really to put a nice little bow on our conversation, what should they expect in terms of consumer expectations regarding crypto?
I think you see that happening already. Nate, the I can't have a day without somebody asking me about crypto. And a little background, I was a part of some of the very, very first internet companies in the 90s, right? And some of the very first stuff, even to the very first crypto companies called eCash and DigiCash, I was involved with in the late 90s. Not any time did I ever experience the amount of questions or inquisitions or just so many different elements. And today, whether it's NFTs or whether it's blockchain or whether it's cryptocurrencies or payments, literally every single day, I am being asked about this today, and that's in all age brackets.
And it probably won't change anytime soon. It's probably just going to increase.
It is. It
Cool.
is.
Well, Well, Jason, this has been a very, very interesting and educational conversation. Where can our listeners get in touch with you and your team if we've struck a chord with them?
Definitely, you can check out coinpayments.net. You can always send me an email directly, jason@coinpayments.net. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, I really, really appreciate you sharing your time with us, and I look forward to having you back on for future conversations.
Absolutely, Nate. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, Jason. That's it for this episode of E-Commerce with Coffee, powered by Amber Engine. If you haven't gotten your fix yet, be sure to get more e-commerce brand secrets on our website at amberengine.com. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes.